They want more. You can still install from it's totally fine. Like, yeah. Yeah, they generally should.
All right. So we'll get started in just a sec. So there are some fun print your own name things that you can do here. This is just for verification. We'll actually do the SchoolNet part of it at the end. But if you want to write your name and what school you're at, this will help us just to make sure that we verify and do all of our fun things like that. So that'll be going around. The session, if you just want to get to the place where we're going to play today, there is a shortened link that I made for everybody, and you can find it right over here. So it's just bit.ly/DEFA-PL. I'll leave that up while you kind of are navigating, and I'm going to introduce myself and my co-presenter. My name is Ben Wilcoff. You may have seen me this morning. Director of Personalized Professional Learning. That's in teaching and learning in the district. And my co-presenter here is Isabel. She's my 8-year-old daughter. If you have any questions about iPads, apps, things like that, she would be more than happy to demonstrate them and show you a thing or two. We may have some time to put up some of her artwork that she's working on right now. But for most of you, you're probably here to learn about forms and add-ons and things like that. So I'm just going to let you type in the top link, and once we're all there, we'll get started. Oh, be that way. Sorry, guys. It's always that last step, right? Making sure everybody. All right, try one more time. And you could just refresh if it's, sorry about that, guys. Is that working now? Feeling a little better? It's always more fun when you can actually play, right? Anybody having any difficulty getting there? We're all good. All right, feeling it. Great. Lovely. Okay. And so, if for whatever reason you wanted to make sure that you had access to this document later, you can always use the link, but I always recommend sharing it with yourself. So if you click up on that top button that says share, you can actually share it with your own account so that it'll stay in your drive and everything like that. It will also not make you like an anonymous animal. So you don't have to be an anonymous wolf, or let's see, we have an anonymous Nyan cat or an octopus. So when you sign in, essentially it's just allowing you to become a real person, which is always nice. This session is called Taking Things Off of Your Plate. We will talk a little bit about scripts and add-ons, but the bulk of what we want to talk about is actually just using the basic tool of a Google form to help personalize learning. And so making sure that we're really well-rounded on that, and then we'll move into the add-ons and script sides of things. So this document is not going to have everything that you possibly want to know about these 3 topics. It will have very specific ways of doing this. My goals in this session are creating some definitions for personalized learning that you might have. Yeah, totally. Where are those? I'll look at you. All right, if at any point you start to feel sleepy, we can start back on. But we're not after lunch, so you're probably okay. So we will have an opportunity to create an adaptive form, and we will look at Google Scripts or add-ons that will help to extend some of the things that we've talked about. All right, I'm going to facilitate, ask questions, propose new ideas, but I want to make sure that you guys are active and that you are teaching one another and learning from one another. And I trust that you are using the tools the way that you would like to use them. So I'm not going to come over, and if you're on your email, I'm not going to say put it away. That's totally up to you. The one note that I have here is So if you're really into the more geeky side of things, the scripting and things like that, it's become a little bit more hidden in the new version of Google Sheets. But you can always get to an old sheet using this fun little shortcut. If you ever needed to get to something that was only available in old sheets, Google created this for you, and you can use g.co/old sheets. But we're going to be playing in new sheets today. And before we really get started in actually doing much with the tools, I want you to be talking to one another, and I want to get some of the voices in the room. So before we even ask these questions, how many of you are elementary folks? One or two? How many of you are secondary-ish? How many of you span the whole thing? Nice. Okay, and anybody work specifically with adults as like the program? Okay, a couple of folks. Nice. So what I want to think about are a couple of things. So with a table person, and you can talk to these people, hopefully that's okay, or find a partner, I want you to think about these couple of things. So what does it mean for you to personalize learning for a student? And what does it mean that a student personalizes learning for him or herself? There's a little bit of a difference there. I want you to think about, what does that mean? What could that mean if you're doing it for them or they are doing it for themselves? I'll give you guys about 5 minutes to kind of consider that and talk about it. And then the last question is, why should we care about doing both? Why should we be doing those things for students? And those 5 minutes, go. Oh. Let me just play with you.
All
right, so what do you think? So your students are adults, right? So that's so good. So, right? What does it mean personalized learning for those adults? Like, what does that mean?
If I'm going to make it personalized, I make
Okay, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to reading that about
So you're looking at their needs, right?
Yeah.
Sort of trying to figure out what that might be.
Yeah.
How would you see teachers who are doing that for themselves? Like, if they are saying, you know, like, these are the things I need, like, how would they personalize
I mean, I think so, you know, I don't think it's exploring it like I think that's very useful. Starting out with one
Yeah, and well, and that idea that they are then choosing what they are
Yeah.
from among them, right? Like create from among them, unless you're sitting there right there with them, which maybe sometimes you do, but not always, right? And then they have that sort of self-paced or self-guided. And I guess to my mind, it's like, okay, so there's a combination there that probably is, right? What do you see in your supports? Yep. So you have a huge range of skill sets and you know, your science department is like probably already doing some of this work, you know, you have a number of other departments that are probably just starting,
yeah,
right?
really just starting. Everybody's
That's great. They need these things. That's a pretty big lift for you, right?
Yeah.
Is that like that's your full-time gig, is just supporting the awesome. And how long have you been? I think so. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, and so did it all that get
I saw
bond, or is
Yes.
that?
So they're actually.
Right. But that's really exciting.
Yeah, we already have two, so. Use the best tools. Not just.
Right, or what quests, right? Like, there's more to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we start.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, and I like that a lot. Nice. All right, take a last sort of few thoughts. So what are you guys thinking for what it means to personalize for? Personalizing for students. Yeah.
To differentiate for kids, like give them the tools that they need to access the material and therefore be able to meet the learning goals. So, that personalization looks different for kids. Maybe the student needs, the vocabulary defined before accessing a text, or maybe another student needs sentence stems to write to before they can write using paragraphs.
Right, but there's like one key word in there that I always hear whenever somebody talks about this, and that's need. Like you've identified a need that they have, and then you're personalizing it for that need, right? And so, like that's core within that. Like you can't just personalize without knowing the kid. Like you can't personalize without having that understanding of need. Now, on the other side of that, what does it mean when a student personalizes for themselves, when they take it upon themselves to make those choices?
Choice and tiered assignments, perhaps.
Tell me more about tiered assignments.
Well, where there's a entry point based on their background knowledge, based on their ability at that point, and they can self-select that entry point. Teachers often self-select, right? It's not really self-select.
Right. Just
But
letting that.
there is that ability if you have a structure in place for them to self-select where they enter an assignment, a text.
Well, I love that idea of entry points in general, right? Like that there could be multiple entry points into a single topic or a single component. And I've heard a number of you talking about having the same goal, but multiple pathways to get that goal. And so the idea of like having that choice could be pretty important. Hey, but where does the choice come in? I think is like the intentional part, right? So it's saying, okay, so we're not necessarily choosing what the standard is, right? But there is a pathway to that. What else did we think about when a student is sort of choosing? Yeah.
I think going off that too is like it's very important for our kids to be reflective when they are making choices, because like I teach 11th and 12th graders, and I was telling them I think about my really, really high achieving kids, and there's one thing that they always seem to have in common, and that's the thing they learn best. And so these are the kids who are highlighting, color coordinating, organizing things a certain way, using graphic organizers without me ever telling them, because they know how they learn. And so I think a lot of them just were reflective on their own, but I think it's important for teachers also to make sure that that reflection piece is there so that all of our kids figure out like how they learn best and what personalizing learning for themselves looks like, so that we're not, because they're not always going to have a menu of options for the rest of their life, right?
Right, and not a predefined menu at the very least,
They
right?
need to figure out some of that on their own. So
And that's, to me, that's really huge. So how do you make a choice, or how do you make an informed choice if you don't know yourself, if you don't know the things that you might need in order to be able to make that choice? And so the reflection that it requires in order to be able to make that choice is huge. So I like that idea that we've identified choice, we've identified need, we've identified some reflection that needs to happen as a part of the personalization. Yeah.
You just talked a little bit about students having self-advocacy.
And so what does that look like in your mind? Like, what is advocating?
I mean, most students, like you had said, that even though they don't have behavioral problems or something else, they still know what they need to be successful. So even though they may say they don't care about it, they know what they just need to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, well, in trying to help surface that advocacy, you know, if a student is not engaged, it's really hard for them to advocate. And so there is a level of engagement or expectation of engagement or a way in which we can give them an entry point so that they can be engaged and advocate. I think that's about right. Now, why should we care? Like, why is this important to do? Like, I think that we've been differentiating for a long time. We've been trying to, you know, meet the kids where they are and things like that. But why is it important to look at it from sort of a personalization lens? Why should we be either personalizing for or letting them personalize for themselves?
Yeah, well, increasing motivation. So to riff off the metaphor, meeting you where they are, when students personalize their learning, then they move from where they are. So into subject.
Great. And they actually know where they are in that process, right? So they're aware and they have that sort of presence of mind. I think that's huge. Why else does it matter?
It makes it relevant to them. And there's more, well, you said motivation, buy-in, I guess.
Great. And we've all been in classes where there are demotivated students, whether it's just the overall, you know, their overall workload is just not super engaging or motivating, but that we have the possibility to engage them where they are and things like that. So I think that's huge to kind of identify, yeah.
It's also more engaging as a teacher. Like, I don't have to read the same essay 400 times if they have taken it and personalized it for themselves, or taken something that isn't having 2 or 3 same answers that I'm going to read over and over.
Right, like there's more opportunities for teacher engagement, more opportunities, I think, for creating something new. Like this morning during the keynote, like to my mind, like the story becomes about personalization and what those students needed in order to be able to engage in the art content. And so I think that that's huge, right? Like it's more interesting for us too. And I don't think that's a bad thing to think about, right? Like we have our needs too. And so I think that that's kind of an important thing to kind of think about. So my entry point into thinking about personalization is choose your own adventure. Okay, so I always thought about, so how many of you, whether it was the 80s, the 90s, or the 70s, like these existed. How many of you read the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Right, where you get to the point in the story and it says, you know, if you want them to jump off the cliff, turn to page 12. And if you want them to do something else, turn to this page, right? So there was that moment where you had the choice and, let me ask this second question. How many of you looked ahead to see if the character died and then made your choice to see if you were going to go into the other one? Yes? Okay, all right. So I wasn't the only one who did this. It was like, no, I want to keep reading. I want to keep the story going, right? So the idea, though, is that there could be a choose your own adventure assessment or questions that we could ask of students that would let them further do that level of reflection, that would let them identify their own needs, that would let them branch off and dig down deeper into something that they are interested in. So I always ask students, and so I'm a former 7th and 8th grade English teacher, and I would always ask students after like the biggest or the large bout of high stakes testing, I would say, well, what did you learn from that test? And like invariably the answer was nothing, right? Like I didn't learn anything. I just took the thing and filled in the bubbles or did it on the computer. Like that wasn't a learning experience for them, but it can be. And the idea is that if we're spending that much time in assessment and asking them questions, it better be a learning experience. It better be something that they can actually gain something from, whether that's a level of reflection about themselves and how they learn best, or it's something about that content that they can dig down deeper into. And so I think about a choose your own adventure assessment as an opportunity to give instant feedback. When they answer that question, it takes them to the next question or to a piece of content that they need to know something about. So based upon that one response, they dig down deeper, right? They choose a branch and they learn more about themselves, about the content, and they keep on going. So the instant feedback is there. Behind every answer is either helpful content or a new question. So they have a question that is asked about, what do you know about the quadratic equation? They select, I know absolutely nothing. They can then learn more about the quadratic equation. And then they say, the question being, do you now know about the quadratic equation? If the answer is no, they dig down deeper. If the answer is yes, then they get to practice, or they get to try the activity, or they get to do the project that uses that equation, right? But the idea is that we want to differentiate using the tool, and that assessment is a learning process. Now that's like really in the weeds. I want to take it back up a level a little bit and think about what would be an example of this. Okay, so if you click on the 10-minute example, the reason why I do this example is it literally took me 10 minutes to create. Okay, and I want it to be that easy because I know that you don't have like a crazy amount of time to just create a whole bunch of new resources. So this is the 10-minute example where I start with this question: what is your experience with blended learning? I just heard about it from this form. You click that button, and then it takes you to the blended learning page which has a video that I made about blended learning, right? Do you want to go deeper into learning about how to implement blended learning? Yes. Oh, great. I've got now an implementation guide that I can learn about. So that's at the teacher level, right? At a student level, it would be more content specific, or it could be more reflection, asking questions. How do you learn best, to help them identify those kinds of things. Maybe you talk about learning styles on that next page, or you talk about the ways in which they would demonstrate their learning in order to kind of bridge that gap. And not only do I get them to get some content, which is great, but I also can ask those open-ended questions where it says, what are your next steps and why? Okay, so now I can get that data. And how many of you have used a Google form before? Okay, so maybe like half. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the form automatically populates a spreadsheet, and I get that data, and I can start doing stuff with it. I can start making instructional decisions. I can start looking at that data and seeing how many people knew nothing about this topic. How many people are ready to move on? And then I could start looking, and if I ask their names, or if I collect those usernames, my robot got messed up. Sorry, for those of you who are not aware, I'm using my robot to help record, so if you want to look at it again, you can do that later. But the idea is that you have this data that you can now do stuff with, okay? So what I want to do is actually think about, where we are, there we are. So from the 10-minute example, I want you to think about a piece of content that you cover in your classroom, or that you work with adult learners, or you work with a set of folks. So whoever you said is your primary audience, what's the content that you would like to teach? Something small, not like history. Something small. And then on the right side of this table, how can you turn that content into a choose your own adventure assessment? And the reason why I frame it like that is there are a number of ways of doing that. But essentially I'm asking, what is that first question that allows you to branch, that allows you to dig down deeper into content, that allows you to ask the next question? Well, what's the first question? I'm gonna give you guys a couple of minutes to think about that, and I'm gonna just cycle around, and if you're having trouble, look at some of the other examples, okay? Or ask me and let me know. And just as an interlude, Isabel, can you show everybody the art that you're working on right now?
Mm-hmm. So I just finished this one, and a boat is going to the sand or an island that's more over here, and then there's a sun and a shark, and the fish is like, ah!
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's from the wiki, but I made a short link too. So if you just open up the tab. Oh, okay, sorry. So it's bit.ly. I'm just going to scroll up to the very top to make sure I get it right. It's DEFA 14PL. You got it. Yeah, sorry about that. Exactly.
Oh, no, I'm just moving.
I was like, oh, I didn't know we were going that.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
You want us both to be on the same page?
If we're all on the same page, then we'll be able to see it, but feel free to take your own notes and however you're going. Yeah. Oh, yes. The link? Sorry. You're fine. Please don't worry about it. It's very hard to contribute when you can't access the thing. Did it work or no? DEFA 14 PL, all underneath. That's great though. So you have concrete answers, right? Like answers that are right and are wrong. Right?
I'm not really worried about it because, yeah. And even if it
So my question would be, so if you wanted to do this, there's an add-on that's specifically for adding formulas and things like that. So I think there are some ways of but I would start with most basic question and then
We are, yeah.
simple answers that students might provide. And then the right answer, it's like, okay, you've got this, maybe go on to the next thing. But all of those long answers actually take them to that misconception page where they can learn more about, oh, and this is why you might have done it this way. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I did see some really good examples in here, and I want to think about a couple of them and make sure that we're digging down and that we're getting all of what we want. Okay, so that very first one, compare and contrast Greece and Rome's form of government. Okay, whose is that? Okay, so that's a pretty, I would say, large topic, but probably at the right grain size. Like, that's something that you would want students to dig down in. But you've actually asked those essential questions of, do you know what a democracy is, right? That would provide only two branches, right? Probably, yes, I know what a democracy is, or no, I don't, okay? I wonder if there might be a way of asking that question that would provide for more opportunities for choice.
The only thing I'm thinking about is like, because they're gonna have to decide eventually which is the better form of government, the Greeks or the Romans way of doing it. So I need them to first look at, in some ways, both of theirs to be able to compare and contrast it, but then also kind of using primary and secondary sources to be able to decide. So that's what I was kind of thinking. Like if they say they don't know what democracy is, start with the definition. If they do, then I go to Greece's definition.
Yeah, and so at that level, it really does become about teaching them what those two things are. But I also think there's an opportunity there for a little bit of discovery, right? So the students, if you ask the question that is actually more about the components of a republic, where you're saying like, what does this, so what are give me a couple of examples of what components of a republic would be.
Is that it's not, so there's a representative reporting for, other people.
So what if the question was something around, would you rather live in a place that had a representative for this area of your city or your community? Or would you rather have this? And then taking them into those pathways where they can like discover more. Oh, and this is what it looked like here, and things like that. Not to say, oh, you have to do it that way, but that's another way of looking at it where you don't have to start up at that high level, like you either know it or you don't. You could start with a preference, right?
The only reason I wouldn't do it that way, but then they're deciding their opinion before they've gotten
Right.
research.
And so,
That's the only reason I would do it.
and that's fair. And I think you're making a choice as a, you know, as an educator. You're saying like, this is actually how I want to structure it because I want them to know before they choose, right? But then there's also an aspect of, well, how do I make that knowledge about, I actually have a question about this type of government or that authenticating. Okay, yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, so as a math example, and my guess is you were putting in the triangle similarity proofs. Okay, so you were taking a look at this, and I think it's interesting to look at this as a way of looking at something that is perhaps more concrete than our first question, but that could be a way of looking at branching. So her question is, which of the following reasons would work for statement number 2? And you're actually getting them to think about the reasoning behind it, and if they choose one that maybe is not so realistic of a reason, then you have the ability to let them branch into that and learn more. Oh, you know what? This probably wouldn't work because, and you have a video or you have some text or you have a new image that lets them explore that question. So I think that can be pretty powerful actually. So I like that you're also looking at it. So we have some writing examples. We have some social studies and science and math examples. What I want you to do is actually look at and start to look at the step-by-step process for creating that adaptive form. Now there are 2 ways of doing this. If you are the type of person who you already know how to do this, or you're like fairly far along into the I know forms and things like that, stop listening right now. There is step-by-step processes. There's even an animation that will walk you through each one. Okay? So just follow along with that, totally fine. For those of you who kind of want to come along with me, I'm going to take you through those steps that I've already put in the document, but the document still will have them in case you need to reference them later, but it'll take you through step by step. Here's how we do this, okay? So for about 5 minutes, I'm going to demonstrate, and then you guys are going to do it on your own. This is a non-content specific example. We're going to talk about colors. Okay, so it's just making it very, very easy. So if you keep on scrolling down, it says step by step. The easiest way to create a Google form is to use this link. But if you are the type of person who wants to know how to do that from like within your Drive, new form is how you do that, or create form. Okay, but I made the special fun link that lets me do that. And so if I click on that link, and it's that fun Google Docs where I click on the link and then I click on the second link to actually get to the thing, okay? So what it's gonna do is it's gonna create this form. This is a survey that I have just created. It has nothing in it whatsoever right now, okay? But I am going to do a couple of things. One is I'm gonna do my adaptive form test, okay? I'm just gonna title it. And I'm going to have this question be, what is your favorite color? Question mark. Okay? This is my question that's going to allow me to branch. You can do branching as multiple choice most easily. Okay? And the biggest thing that we need to check off is go to page based upon an answer. Based upon my response, I want it to go over here. Okay, so I'm going to choose the 2 options, or 3 options that I want. I'm going to choose red. What's another color that we like? What do you want is? Blue. Okay, good. And then I'm actually going to choose, there's this fun little button that says other. Okay, so it allows them to actually type in a response. Okay, so it's a multiple question, but that still allows them to type in a response. Now, I don't actually have those pages created, so we need to create them. I'm gonna make sure that this is a required question, so they have to answer it, okay? But now we need to create the pages. And if you're like me, you might go up to the insert and you would look for new page. Where is that? Where is that? Okay, it's actually page break, like you would do in a Word document where you're doing a page break or something like that. There's also a second way of coming in it. It's that little caret guy right next to add item, and it lets you do that wherever you are. Okay, so I'm gonna just say page break right there. I'm gonna call this the red page. I'm gonna do the same thing. Call it the green page. And then the last one I'm gonna do is my other page. So now what I get are the 3 pages, right? And all I have to go and do is edit that question, because we said it needs to go to those pages. Now I need to tell that question which page to go to. Okay? So I'm gonna.
What happened to blue?
What happened to blue?
I just
Oh.
out of curiosity.
Oh, because you guys, you're just too good for me. I just added green for fun. No, it's not part. It's just my lack of understanding that we just chose blue. All right, thank you. So you make it so if they chose red, it goes to red. Blue goes to blue, not green. Then people would get really confused, right? And then we make it go to other. Okay, so great. So we have this branching form, but now we actually need to put some stuff on those pages. The things that we can put there are more branching questions where we do another multiple choice question where we keep on branching. We can also, oops. I need to be connected to the internet. Come on. Yay. So we have our different pages, and the other things that I can add that may be of value to me, okay, are obviously different question types, but the things that I tend to do, especially when it's a content page, are putting in section headers, which lets me put in text. So I can say, you chose wrong. Blue is a terrible color. It's not really, Isabel, don't worry. And that becomes the text that I put in. If I put any links in there, like I want them to go and look at something, that'll show up. Okay, I can also put in images. So I can choose from my desktop, I can choose from a URL, I can look, within my Google Drive and see what images are in there, all those kinds of things. So I can put in images, and I can also, whoops, stop that. I can also put in a video. So I'm gonna just search for blue. Now I am in the override right now, so clearly we need the Eiffel 65 blue dabba dabba dee dabba dabba doo. And what we can do is put that in, but let's say that that's a piece of content. I can make it as big as I want. I can call this your terrible choice. Okay. And then when you click the button that's, oops, not covered up, the button that says View Live Form, and I choose blue, click Continue, did I do that wrong? Stop. Oh, and so we have an error here. Error. So you go back up. Oh, I didn't choose one. Blue and other. So if I go back to my form, and now it takes me to the page. So the idea is that as you guys are going through, you create questions that let you branch, but then you also create the content that goes on through those branching pages. Okay? Again, those steps are right there for you. What I would like you to do is to do at least one question with branching pages as a part of the next stage of our activity, and then to share the link to your form with us. So when you're ready, when you've got your first branch, or let's say you are really advanced and you want to go for 2 or 3 branches, okay, then all you have to do then is click the View Live form and then copy and paste your link back over here for us to look at, so we can do that. If you're of the interest, if you're interested in receiving credit for it, there's a direct link for you to actually get a badge specifically for this skill. Now that you have this skill, you can get one of those. And for those of you who are, let's say you are more visual learners, or the way that you would like to structure this, because that feels very linear, this is a way of actually plotting out your choices. So the idea being that if you wanted to write out your questions and all of your answers and things like that in a visual format, you can plot it out first, and then you can move it over to your form. Okay. It's on that document, yep. So it's just up before step 1. So what I want everybody to do is create their first form, create a couple of options within that question, create those pages. Again, help each other. I'm gonna be around to help, and we're gonna be able to do this together, okay? We're gonna take about 10-15 minutes to do this. Before we do it, I do want like overall questions like, oh man, I'm totally lost, those kinds of things. That's okay. We can do some small grouping as well, but any big questions before we go? Yeah. So the link that I put in there will create a form in your Google Drive, but if you go from your Google Drive, that's also the same thing. Yep. Yep.
Is there a way to, when you have one of these adaptive forms, a way to create after adaptive form? Like, so in some of the things downstairs, but doing the grading.
Yep.
You have an adaptive form, you still do that.
You can still do that as long as the answers are known, right? Like if there are right answers, you can do a grade. If it's like all subjective and you're writing in responses and things like that, not so much. But yeah, if they're much like what you were looking at with the math example, or if there are specific answers that you're looking at that have right answers. Okay. All right, about 15 minutes to play. Do you have another piece of art that we should be looking at, Isabel? All right, very quickly. This is the abstract masterpiece. Thank you, Isabel. You actually have a sphere?
Yeah, we were able to get it. It's about 6 we're able to see the use
Oh, wow. So it can pivot either way. How did they do that? More functionality and cheaper?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Cool.
I love that. Thinking what I need here is. Can I, what do you mean?
To lock that one.
Love it.
And then,
Oh.
that's okay. I'll pretend it's an astronaut fun.
I love that one, kiddo.
This
All right, I'm gonna go help some people, okay?
It's so silly.
I love it.
So what if they did a second question, it says question entirely, would that be the question itself?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Nope, you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I would print that out and write it. I just think. But I'm not using this.
Does anybody know where the bathroom is on the floor?
Yes, it's at the very far end, way at the other end of the hallway on the left. Ladies.
Okay. And if you don't find it, come on back, okay? All right, who had their hand up? Someone over here? Yes.
Nobody can say it, but I'm not gonna say that. I can see this.
There's like a strip, the same red.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's right above. Right, you can see it, it's like, you can-
Oh. So I think not, it's going to be, okay.
so you have,
Okay, yeah,
yeah. So the way in which you can do that, where it automatically does that, is a query. So it's equals query, and then you look at, you highlight the whole thing. And then your query is,
you know,
well, what I'm thinking of theory, all of that is like, going back to lessons in algebra. And then from the lessons, like,
are you using your geography?
no, I'm just making some data code, so I'm gonna say that it's test of the lens.
You can select
So there's a
however
website
many
that's
columns you want. So select
that I'll link to this website, which would be see this, that,
Right,
you know,
right.
and then they can go back and do the test. So in this school, I think it's like copy A, because it will do it, but it could be a good.
Right.
So I should, I would try to see if it really fits.
And it'll be like, oh, yeah.
So they can all-
Well, I don't know if, so you may have to switch it up, right?
Oh, I think, but I.
Yeah, that would be. I don't know.
That's how you do it. I wouldn't have to look up
Right.
how to do it with the timestamp, but that's how I do it.
That's cool.
Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's be done for the moment. This question. Right. And so just row nine, and breaks, set up all your details, and then go back to the question and put them in code. So I kind of do it where you set up the question, you know what your options are, then say done, you go and make your pages, and go back to the question. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Well, originally I was thinking about that. I'm trying to drive this so that students can make projects.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And so I want to see what the course is already done, I want to give them the initial starting.
Right.
So my first question is try to. What? Subject area? Math, science, whatever.
Right.
And that seems.
So you can go at that level, you could say like, here are a couple of examples of projects. What sounds most interesting to you? Doing a project about something that has robotics or something like that, right? Or doing a project around like, which ones of those, rather than, because you can't imagine that we would choose math, if that's the option. But if they are then they're well, just like as a preference, like,
Oh, right.
right, as a student preference, they're like, oh, you know what, I know that I'm not good at math or whatever.
Right.
So they don't choose that, but they actually might have affinity for the math project.
Right.
If they understand, oh, this is what I can do with my math project.
Exactly.
Exactly. So does that make sense as a
Yeah.
way of framing the question
Yeah.
a little bit?
So, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then.
And then
That's
taking
kind
it
of-
from
that's
there,
kind of what I'm saying.
so let's say that you have, and so for the moment, let's put in the options of robotics or architecture or something, right? Great. So those are the two options. So press done. And so those are the two options. So we have to make pages for those options. You go to that little area next to it, great, and make the architecture project page. Correct, and you can change it later, you just wanna make sure that you've set up the structure first, right? So, you're gonna do it. Right. Love it. Right, totally.
Okay,
So
that's
then-
one.
So that's page 1, and then let's make page 2 robotics. Yep. Great, brilliant. Great. And you just put down, like, you would even have to make a robot. But,
Okay, right here.
and then if you go back over to the question. Yeah, right.
Is that an answer?
Well, so it'll open up and you have your options again.
Yeah.
So you did this right, now you check, go to page based on answer, and now when you tell it, go to that page. So you select, yep, that, and then select the your bucket page from right here. And make that one go to the bottom page.
So, some of the things
Done. Move your form
so
here,
it's just for me to see. Yeah, but
and
when
you
I
change
exit,
your bucket.
yeah, and then I go
So then you have your content or your questions, and it's now, they have made a choice that then opens up new things. Well, that's the idea, right? Like you get this skill and then you make it do the thing you want. Is this making sense? Yes?
Yeah.
And that way I would treat lots of that. And then
When we go to Form 7, what do we want to start with that
So up here, if you want the kids have to sign in, then yes. Otherwise, don't do that one. You know, if they don't know how to log into their Google account or something like that, if you're worried about that, uncheck that.
Well, this is one of the agendas.
So great.
Will their responses be anonymous?
So if you automatically collect the username, then you would know even without asking them their name.
Otherwise, it populates data or yes.
Just their responses. So if you can either ask them their name, make that a required question, or you can have it do this where it
The very first question.
Yep. Yep. Love it.
So that is.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to create it. Yep. Exactly. Great. And you, exit, so because you have more than 2 options, you get rid of the one with 5 extra options. You have a yes and a no, and then you can.
What about I don't know?
I don't know, could be another option, yeah. And that could take you to another place that will help you to know. Page 2, but then you would have to change page 2 from red page to be the yes, right? Does that make sense? Right. And then you're done with that, yep. If you created the branching, so now this page changed to the yes page, yep. Does that make sense?
So if you put this into your Google Classroom, and then you keep that as an assignment, and then you wouldn't necessarily like kind of take off the photos or be sitting in the classroom and
They would already be logged in, so they wouldn't have to log in again. But you would leave that on so that it would collect everything that you have to ask. We just always just like one less question is 10 less seconds that the student has to spend on your per second, right? Well, maybe I'm being a little bit.
Yeah, so, creating it's being written on a phone. So let's say that they choose the photo they want to discuss, right? Then they can see the let's say I'm testing over, whether they so, good, so, it's fine. Yeah, so we continue, okay, good, they got that right. Now, when I continue again, it goes to that, which I want them to avoid, right?
Right, so let's go back to our form.
Okay, so that, and it's,
Yeah, it's form's fine. And so what we do is.
so that I can bring to the piece where, let's say that they, so they should come here, correct primary color. So then it's this right here.
At page 3, you wanted
Not to
to
be seen in this page, so,
submit the
or
form.
so that before, or I can go to a whole other level where I
That's
say
exactly
as a secondary nutrition. Correct. So the student buy-in there is really, they're just choosing what color to talk about, but I'm still learning whether they know as well.
Exactly. So then you get the choice, but then you also get
So they feel involved because they chose, now for colors that seems really simplistic, they don't think about population, geography.
Yep.
They can choose a country, which actually may be
correct.
right? Or they're interested.
Right.
Or they're in kindergarten, they're maybe. Okay, I get it.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. What, you didn't find it?
Yes.
All right, I'll come in and help you in a second.
Then hopefully you help use it. In several ways.
Great.
Or,
Yes, love it.
then you work
That, yeah.
Oh, I love those.
So the great influence for my.
So then all you have to do is, I think, make him engage for the 2 holes and not add item that's one next to it.
Or like,
To make for I don't have to do
I guess I'm like, so like
And
that,
then you give them more information and more questions in the, at their level.
or what's your insurance
No, no, no.
Like, if I
Right,
wanted to
that's
say-
totally appropriate. All right, let's go in search of the bathroom.
If you have the right to the
I know there's one right down the stairs, like
as
right
long
by the
as they're-
stairwell. Is that
So
on?
there's a right there that says you must have your GPS. Well, I've always understood it, that is a circle of my classroom. You know what I mean? I'm using it visually, but it's still restricted to my class. And only my class has a link, and furthermore, you have to be in GPS to see it. But it's not copyright, on the board.
Right.
But I mean, I see.
Yeah.
And that would be different than me publishing on it.
Right,
because
like on my
but-
website, right,
Right,
right.
exactly.
Because like, I think it would just be easier to use a document right? To try and find things that would match the question I'm trying to.
And scan PDF,
Right.
your Google, and then it would have a link, the total
Right.
publishing link,
Got it.
except within within a password protected.
Right, and they have like stuff that they're doing last week.
That's password protected, that's not legal.
Is that what you're? We look up every single thing to match the question.
Sorry about that, guys. Finding the bathroom's kind of important.
Did she find it?
She did. It was, she just didn't go down far enough, so.
Exactly.
All right, so I do want to make sure that we have time to talk about a couple of other things. But if I was going to give you all of the time in the world, you could probably play with that all day. So I want to recognize if you got the thing that you came here for, keep on playing and doing that. But if you want to sort of keep on coming with me, I would love to talk about a couple of other things. What I do want to make sure that we can do is share what we have made. So wherever you are right now, even if it's not like the most amazing thing that you ever made in your life, click on that View Live Form button right here where you made the thing. And then copy that link back over to our document and say, you know, this is my awesome color form. And then just paste it in, right? Just so that we can see one another's and sort of that we know, right, that it is, you know, the thing that we are trying to do. Whoa. Okay, so I want to see some forms. Love it. Awesome triangle proof form. Yay! Urban farming adaptive form, right? Like that's cool, right? That's not, oh, so one note, you have the box checked that says require you to be logged in, okay? And so I'm not logged into our DPS account at this particular moment. So it's saying, don't do that. So I need to make sure that I'm logged in with my DPS account and not like my Gmail account or something like that, right? Yeah, so it's all the way up at the top. There's a checkbox that says, yeah, on the form, when you're editing it, that says require a DPS account, okay? And so if you check that box, it requires them to be logged in. And we already talked about over here, if you're using Classroom or something else that actually asks them to already be logged in, then that's not an issue, right? Like it just takes them there, they don't have to log in. But if you clicked off of it, and so now when I do it, it should be open, and now I can see their questions, right? So this is a way of ensuring that you can actually collect those usernames without asking their name, but maybe you actually want that. Maybe you don't want to have to worry about whether or not they can log in or something like that, and then you just uncheck that box and ask for their name. Now they have to be honest about who they are, but maybe you work on that with trust. So thank you so much for sharing those individual examples. I feel like it's super important to be able to think about it. Now I'm gonna shift the thinking a little bit, and I wanna ask you this question. Here, would you guys go half-mast on your lids for just a sec? Okay, the two questions. So you lower the lids and then, yes, fair enough. Okay, so the two questions are these. First is, what happens when you let students create these forms? Okay, so I want you to think about that. What if the student is the one creating the adaptive form? What does that let them do if they are the ones asking the questions and creating the branches? Because we talked at the early stages about how do we let them personalize their learning? How do we let them create some of this? So for just a moment, talk to one other person for just probably 2 minutes. What happens, what changes if the students are creating the form? Okay? Go.
It's not recording you.
Oh, it is. Did these work?
I don't know where that would go. There's something about
I want to stop here.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to guess. I want to stop
the
here.
words that everybody's.
guess maybe
Does that make sense? Does it work? All right, I hear a couple of really cool ideas. I want to hear at least a few. Okay. What's a really cool idea or a thought about how students might use this particular sort of tool? I'm going to come to you because I heard it.
Okay. I just had an idea. I started to think about ideas. One of the things is maybe have students work in groups at the end of the week to sort of create like a quiz, and then they can quiz their classmates and filter it out. And I think it'd be really helpful because not only are they learning how to interact with the new technology, but they're also diving deeper into the material and taking charge of their learning.
Great. And they become the teacher at that point, right? Like, and that's one of the things that we know about learning is one of the best ways to know that you know the content is to have to teach someone else about it, right? And one of the things that I didn't talk about, but that is actually pretty powerful, is the add collaborator on the form. So just like a Google Doc, I can add collaborators and I can build out this massive, crazy 25-page form with a couple of different people rather than having to do it all myself, right? So a group of teachers can do that. Also, a group of students could do that. Okay? Other thoughts? Yeah.
One thing, just going off of her too, was the idea of even using it like in relation to like a feedback tool and a reflective tool. So kids are required to do presentations in a lot of classes or do jigsaws, and it would be cool for them to create like, almost like it was a quiz that they would give after they presented their piece of the reading or they did their presentation to see how effective their presentation was for their peers, and then reflecting on that about like what they could have adjusted,
Yep.
or obviously what they weren't clear on, so that they can become better at presenting or jigsawing or teaching their peers, so that the kids can just get better and better at during the classroom.
Totally. And I really like that idea that they are then using data, right? Like to inform their practice of teaching and learning. I think that's huge. I feel like you had a question.
I did, but it's a little off topic, so I think I might be up until the end.
Okay.
It was
Make sure
about-
you write it down or think about it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Well, I was just like, all this form stuff is really cool, and we use Google Classroom as well. Is there a way to differentiate in this kind of way, like student to student for Google Classroom? Like, because you can always send a form to class, but can you send it to you adapt it individually for a student? Like the form you can do obviously, but like the document that you send, I don't know, like how to send certain things to the classroom.
Yeah. So that's where we're talking about next.
Oh, okay.
So that is like the perfect segue. So I swear I didn't plant you. But the idea is actually, and this is like the second big question for me, is what would happen if everyone had an IEP? If every student had an individualized learning plan or education plan, what would happen then? Okay, this is the question that like haunts me because like in a current IEP process, no way, right? Like we're not talking about everyone having those IEP meetings or things like that. What I am talking about is what if everyone had their own plan for what they were going to learn? I think somebody there, now it's on the next page. So the idea though is that what would happen if every student had their own document, their own plan that they would be able to look at and achieve upon? And what if we use the data from our forms to help create those documents? So that from their preferences, from their knowledge set, what would happen if we created those plans based upon what their data was, what they filled out within the form? Yeah.
Jetco is doing the combination, their health department is combining their ALPs with their ICAP information. so that students understand what they're doing currently is also connected to what they will do in life.
Right.
And this seems sort of close to that.
Yeah, and the idea that it's not this disconnected, like what I'm doing in this particular moment is disconnected from next year, but that it's actually a plan for right now that then builds into a bigger plan, that then builds into a bigger plan. So I think that's actually really huge, using the current data to work on current topics, but then seeing where the scope is. So one of the things that I wanted to at least have as an example, and we're not gonna get to all of this, I wanna front load it and say, these are options, but there are some complexities here that we're not gonna have time to deal with. But I want you to know what's possible and what you can dig in deeper with. So the exploration time, there are a number of specific examples. The most specific example here is of creating a personalized learning plan, just like we were talking about, based upon the data. So this is a personalized plan for a survey about Google Apps. So I'm gonna just type it in here. Whoops, that's not an email address, by the way. So if I put in my email address and I put in first and last name, and then I'm gonna answer a couple of questions about what I know about Google Drive. This is the first time I've ever heard about it. I have edited a few things. I have edited a Google site, and I have no idea what you're talking about with Google Apps Scripts. So, oops, and I have to do that one. So when I submit, there's a thing that is happening in the background. There is an add-on or a script that is running that is taking that data and saying, if you answered in this way, give them this plan. If you'd answer in this way, give them this part of the plan. And so it's going through and taking you, and what it's actually doing is, oh, and I'm on, just in case you were wondering, this is what the new Gmail inbox, or what a possible new Gmail inbox might look like sometime soon, which is really nice and fun to think about, but it's not important for right now. Bum, ba, bum. Oh, and I bet you it's over here. Whoa, whoa. Stop. Oh, good Lord. All right, I'm not gonna mess around with this because I just got it yesterday. I was like, whoa, this is really cool, but I don't know where anything is yet. So the idea being that, what are you doing? Hello? Hello? I just want my mail. Sorry guys, I think I might be disconnected from the interwebs. On my phone, I got it. Okay. Yay. Here we go. So my personalized plan that was generated for me based upon my responses looks like this. And it's a new Google document, much like you were talking about, where I'm actually distributing a document based upon what I filled out in that particular form. The tool that I'm using in that form or in that add-on is called Autocrat, okay? And that allows me to set up a template document. Stop that. That sets up a template document that it pulls the data from my form into. Why are you behaving like this? This is less fun. There we are. And so what we get is my name all over this thing. I get my own specific responses that I need, and I'm able to then work through my plan, which has a bunch of next steps for each one of the tools that I need to work on. So I'm thinking about for folks who need to learn more about urban farming, let's say. They are able to make that particular determination, what they need to learn more about, and then you are able to say, go here for more information, and then in your document, reflect upon it, or do the assignment that's in this document. And using Classroom in that way can help to distribute the documents, as well as sort of think about, well, what kinds of activities do I want them to be accomplishing? So that's one example. The next, and I'm just going to pull it over here so we don't worry about it. The next few are really about, well, what else do you want to do with that data? How else do we want to sort of look through? And the add-ons, which you'll see at the top of documents, you'll see at the top of forms, and you'll see at the top of spreadsheets. This add-ons is where all of this magic is going to happen. And there are a bunch of tutorials that they'll actually walk you through, and you're able to use them each and every time. And I do wish that my computer was not behaving quite so badly. So a couple of the other examples that I like a lot. One is called Form Ranger. Form Ranger allows me to add or remove options from a question in a Google form based upon what people have already said. So let's say that we use that other field where they add an other column. But you want other kids to be able to select that as an option. So Form Ranger will allow me to add that then to the list of options so that the first kids are generating ideas. They're like, oh, I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing. Then everybody that comes through can also select that as an option. And that becomes something, oh, I want to work on that project too. It's a way of organically generating project ideas. Or you want to go in the reverse order. Let's say you only want 3 people to be able to select a given project. You have that as a question on your form. You use the same add-on, Form Ranger, to remove that as an option once 3 people have checked that box. So that's no longer a project that's available. And nobody knows who selected what. It's just all that game of, oh, I want to get in there first and select my thing, right? So as long as you're using this in specific ways, you can use that data to help support the personalization, right? To help support who gets to do what. And so that's one of my favorite examples. The other examples that I put in there that you can continue to explore, bum, ba, da, bum. Man, this is a long document apparently. Big question, there we go. And then the last one is a feature that essentially you want kids to sign up for specific conference times, or you want kids to be able to sort of reserve a particular resource. Using the form rule script, you can actually send them a calendar invite based upon their form response. So that's something that, you know what, that allows me to further personalize their calendar, their particular time period. They want to sign up for this particular station, or they want to sign up for this particular thing. It will allow them to see that on their calendar. So the example that I have here is actually a KWL personalized learning plan. And it walks you through step by step how to actually do it. All of the animations are there, so you can actually look at them. So it says, okay, once you make copies of this, go in here and add the add-on. So it actually walks you through how to add the add-on, what settings you need. And so what I would like you to think about is, well, how would I use that? How would I think about having a personalized plan for a student based upon the data they put into a form? What would that look like for me? Okay, based upon the data that they have just responded to. So you get things that they want to learn about, things that they don't know about. What would you do with that? If you were able to create a personalized plan based upon that data. What would that look like? And so this walks you through how to do that thing, but how would you use it? Is it something you would use? Is it something that would be valuable to use? Now, clearly we haven't gone through and done it, okay? But all of the steps are there and you can kind of check them out on your own. But I want you to think about that. How could you, or would you, use a personalized learning plan based upon the data filled out in a form, or the data that you're receiving from students, or the data you're receiving from adults on whether or not they can use the Chromebook, right? How would you use that? So type in, there are a bunch of spots there for your bullets. And I just want to think about this for a moment. So who's the anonymous ferret who's saying it would be hard not to have access to computers all the time? I love, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's actually kind of important to think about, right? Like, when is the computer essential? When is it not essential?
Or when students have it at home, or students.
Yeah. And I also think about, forms are actually fairly low weight. So thinking about, do I have enough devices that are in kids' pockets or in their lockers that might be able to accomplish filling out a form?
And does your school let you?
Fair enough. Like, there's always that consideration too, right? Whether or not they can use their phones or iPod touches or whatever. Okay. So I really like these responses here. You could use the choice eliminator to reduce the multiple choice options if that's required by the IEP. Love that. Whose thought was that? Brilliant.
Well, it would require, the only way you do it is the students would have to say whether that's in their IEP.
Right.
So then there's a trust factor too, right? But then I can check the answers whether they.
Yep. I like that a lot. And then you're differentiating even based upon their IEP, like what is actually in there, because those supports could be different in their plan, right? I love that. Okay. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I said to punch people if they didn't ask for folks to, there it is. So you don't have to punch me, I was on it.
Oh,
okay?
I heard that, yeah. Take credit for that.
So if you go all the way up to the top of the dock, and if your computer is functioning better than mine, good. It's like there's a ghost using it right now. Okay, so up at the top, I linked to the evaluation, but I also very cleverly linked to the registration for this particular session. So if you go over here and sign in to your SchoolNet account, you will be able to register and get credit for having been here and engaged and hopefully learn something, so that you can get credit for that. The last things that I will say is all of my contact stuff is at the very bottom of the document. There are also some additional resources if you want to learn more about how people are using these tools. And I highly recommend digging in. But I'm also available for questions and thoughts and thought partnership. If you have something cool you want to do, there are a whole bunch of people. Just so happens that that Jessica walked in and is also available, Jessica Raleigh, to be a thought partner for something you want to do in your school. But I'm expecting some good things to happen. Not expecting them to happen all at once, but I'm really excited about the